luxury apartment hearing. We're getting ahead on this progress here, I can see that. The agenda today, thanks to Dick Heaton, I wouldn't know where I was going, I'd be floating around here, but Dick keeps me in order. But the first thing we got is a business called money. Did you bring a check?
I didn't bring a check. I'd like to bring one on Friday if I could.
You bring your what?
Bring a check in on Friday.
On Friday. Is that acceptable so you can continue?
Absolutely.
I guess so.
We're closed
you.
Friday, so Monday.
Okay, Monday's okay?
Well, that's why he wants to do it on Friday.
I'd gladly bring you a hamburger on Tuesday.
I'm going to sign it this time. We know that.
The check is in the mail.
We're missing somebody.
Dan Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Way to
not
go.
yet. He's not here yet.
I don't know where. He isn't coming?
I expect him.
We're going to miss him.
Yeah, I missed it
We
already.
got some fiery questions. We need powerful answers. Okay, project update. I guess we got some issues regarding the fire chief's concerns.
Yeah, I got one, yeah.
So let's put that up. Oh, I've got, wait a minute, would you just sit down for a minute?
Want me to sit down for a minute?
Just sit down for a minute. There's one piece of business we need to take care of,
He might have one, but I'm not.
and that's the letter. You got this? No, you don't have it. Just let me get through with it. It'll take me a minute.
What letter is that?
Lisa, would you please read the letter written
This one?
by Cheryl?
What date? What's the date?
September 10th.
September 10th.
Received on the 11th.
What is that? I got it.
The letter's dated September 10th. Mr. Bowen, per your request by phone yesterday, I'm writing to you regarding questions I have on the affordable housing project named Lunenburg Village, proposed by developer LLC Gary B. Lorden. On the proposed plans, there is a locked gate located to the back corner of the development adjacent to a supposed private roadway named F&L Road. I mentioned private way because according to the town of Lunenburg records, there is no evidence that shows F&L Road as a public way. I understand there are deeds from 1893 and 1897 establishing F&L Road as a right-of-way for the Fitchburg and Leominster Street Railway Company, specifically for street railway purposes. These deeds indicate that when the way is no longer used for street railway purposes, the rights granted shall revert back to the grantor. In 1994, there is a deed relinquishing the railway's rights to this road, but seems to be an error as to who the rights reverted to specifically. Does the town of Lunenburg have presently the right in that way sufficient to allow such use to grant Mr. Lorden's plans to access this gate by utilizing F&L Road? Did the town of Lunenburg request of Mr. Lorden proof of permission from the current owner to utilize F&L Road? If so, could you please provide me with the name of this owner? Please respond to my questions in writing. Knowledge of what you can provide would greatly be appreciated. Thank you, Cheryl Kuzmich, 30 F&L Road, Leominster, Mass.
Okay, you're prepared to respond to that letter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am. For the record, Paul Haverty from Ignante Stereo and Osborne, representing the applicant.
He is now.
I recognize it was quite a while ago when we had the original hearing on this matter, but this was, in fact, fully addressed at that time. This office sent in a letter dated, I don't have it with me, it was in 2009. We submitted a letter specifically addressing our client's rights to use that F&L way, and actually the bigger issue at the time was whether or not the use that we were planning on doing would infringe upon any residual rights anyone had, pursuant to the F&L easements. But if you could take a look, Wes, can you point out on the plan where that is?
Welcome. We're dealing with the letter from that woman that challenges the right for use of right-of-ways. We sent you a copy of that letter.
When was this?
From
Got it right there.
Cheryl
One dated.
Kuzmich. So we submitted a letter in December 2009 explaining how we had rights to that. But as Wes will be able to show you, from where it comes in at Leisure Ave, all the way up to the area where we show the emergency access gate. That's the original plan, by the way. That's not the current plan. But that area is fully within the site. So this is not an issue of, us claiming to have an easement over somebody else's property. If that easement has extinguished, then we own the fee to it. So we own it entirely without any sort of encumbrance over it. So it really shouldn't be an issue. Moreover, it was already approved with a full roadway in that location. What's now being proposed is actually just an emergency access way, which, pursuant to state statute, Chapter 89, Section 7, emergency vehicles have the right to traverse any right-of-way, public or private. So the issue of whether or not that there is the rights to use this way for emergency access is simply not relevant to this proceeding.
I have a question. Excuse me, I'm choked up here. Is there a letter that we can respond, documentation we can respond to this person?
I can resend you the letter that we submitted back in 2009.
Okay, would you rather send it to us, or could you send it to...
I would prefer to do it through the board rather than...
Rather than the board. Then the board, at that point in time, will use that letter to respond to
Yep.
this. Lisa, could you make appropriate notes to that effect?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we're ready. Thank you.
Welcome. Us?
For the record, Wesley Fliss, Whitman and Bingham Associates.
Oh, wait a minute.
Sure. Want Fred
Just before you go, is that the woman in back, did you write the letter? Do you want to say something to this moment, or are you satisfied with what we've done so far? I'm sorry that I didn't recognize you.
Well, if it's already been addressed.
No, you have to come forward. I almost missed up.
If you can answer the questions in my letter with the letter that you're referring to that's been already addressed in 2009, then I can take it from there.
Okay, so we'll do it. The applicant will generate the letter, responded to the board. Lisa will turn around, summarize that, and through me and her, we will send you the documentation.
That's fine.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get off. You're getting good exercise anyway.
We all set now?
Go ahead, we're ready.
What's in front of you here this evening is also the plan that I handed out to you and that I emailed to the board members a couple weeks ago, that everybody got in email correspondence with the full entire package of plans. The plan has been developed after having some conversation with Mr. Hamway, who was the peer reviewer on the project, going back and forth with a couple of the smaller items that needed to be addressed, and also some of the items that came from the water department with regards to the way the project's going to be serviced with the water out here. A couple of the things that we added to the plan or changed to the plan have to do with some of the landscaped islands within the parking lot. Before they're shown as hatched paved areas. Now they're shown as, right now, grassed landscaped areas throughout the parking area to kind of break up the pavement as part of one of the waivers that we had originally asked for, and the board felt that the island should be added to the plan to kind of break up the pavement. On the plan also, we have changed where the sidewalk locations are after the discussion from the last board meeting that we had, where in the interior of the development, there's no grass space in between the pavement and the sidewalks in the interior, but from the interior of the development out to Whalum Road, we do still show that grass strip between the sidewalk and the pavement. One of the other items that we changed was the water service into the development. Right now, we have the water service that comes in down the right-hand side of the driveway, dead-ending between the two buildings, building number 3 and building number 4. There's a hydrant located there. The hydrant located here, and then also a hydrant located at the intersection of Whalum Road. I know the fire department had a comment with regards to the middle hydrant that we had shown on the plans, and so we will change that location. And actually, I've already changed it on the plan. I already showed Mr. Hamway, so he knows that that hydrant has been changed, and all we did was slide that hydrant up probably 25, 30 feet up to the to the bulb here between the two driveways, the left and right-hand driveway. A couple other comments that the fire department had within their letter had to do with the snow storage. And just so to clarify on the snow storage, I think there was some confusion with regards to their comment. On the snow storage, we had shown snow storage over the future parking spaces. I know it was a comment from the board to show future parking spaces. Obviously, if Mr. Lorden comes in here with capacity of parking, if he needs future parking, at least we showed it already in the plan where that future parking is. Obviously, if he never puts the future parking in there, they're going to use it as snow storage. And so there was some...
No, if there's not a blizzard, you're golden, huh?
If there's not a blizzard, you said? Yeah.
A blizzard.
Yes. And so, obviously, if those future parking spaces go in, they're not going to use that area as snow storage. But right now, because it's not going to be built with that parking spaces there, they're going to use it as snow storage. And I think that's where some of the question can be answered there. One of the other items that the fire department had was regard to a detail for the crushed concrete apron around the back of the building. There has been a detail on the plan showing the crushed concrete driveway around the buildings, where we showed the 12 inches of crushed concrete with the loam and the grass seed, which has been on the plan for the last couple of revisions, that Mr. Hamway has had a chance to review and has signed off on the detail for that, that it's adequate to provide access around the building, with that reinforced turf around the building. One of the other items that the fire department had in their letter had to do with access throughout the site and to see if they can get their largest vehicle around the site. And so we had done, even when we had done design, to make sure some of the turning movements could be made by any of the vehicles, be it a emergency vehicle or any kind of delivery vehicle that might show up on the site. And Mr. Hamway actually had a chance to check that also on the initial review, and he had made a comment on that in the initial review that he had looked at the turning movements even at that point. And we both came up with the same answer, that the turning movements should be adequate enough for the emergency vehicles that they asked for. Some of the other items that Mr. Hamway and I went back and forth with had to do with more detail-oriented items. Let's see here. Had to do basically with labeling, had to do with some of the separation between the sewer and the water. Because we changed the water location, some of that issue went away with regards to the separation in the water. We did provide some of the additional information with regards to the backup calculations, with regards to the drainage, and also with regards to the sewer to Mr. Hamway, so you could have that. Also, we provided him with the updated the updated drainage analysis, just so he would have an official copy within his records. I know we submitted it to the board, but Mr. Hamway wanted to make sure that he had that final narrative in his report. We also did, and I know, I'm trying to think of who the traffic, I know it's Bill Scully now, but I'm trying to think what's the company works for. Is it, is it Green Engineering or however the company works for now? But they did update the traffic analysis, submit it to the board, also submit it to Mr. Hamway. The only thing that Mr. Hamway and I had a chance to sit down this past Friday to go over some of the final items that him and I had outstanding, basically. And one of the things that I know Mr. Hamway, not to talk for him, but he can tell you the same thing, is that some of the things he wanted to make sure is that the recommendations that came from the traffic analysis were included in the approval, I guess, or were included in the plans, which the majority of the items are included in the plan. I think there's only one item in the traffic analysis that we didn't show in the plan that needs to be discussed with regards to the playground and the recreational area, with regards to access between the two of them. And I think that's something that can be open for discussion, I think, when we get to that point of talking about that recreational area parcel. One of the items, I think, the only item that I think Mr. Hamway and I actually have outstanding that we didn't come to a consensus on, and it probably has to do between the board and the applicant, is regards to the islands. Like I said, we show them as a grassed island. Mr. Hamway wasn't sure what the board's definition of landscaped island was, and so I think both of us agreed to let the definition come from you guys on what you would like to see in those islands. If a grassed island was adequate enough for you, or if not, to be under the definition of a landscaped island. So that would be the only item that I can think of that we didn't agree on technically, that would need an interpretation from the board on that one item. So The other thing that we did submit in between the last meeting now is an updated waiver list. And I don't know at what point you want to go over the updated waiver list, because there are some items on there that we did update with regards to the plan. And as Mr. Lorden was just pointing out to me, to make sure that the board knew, is that we still have a waiver with regards to the pavement width, thickness, that was in conjunction of what the recommendations from Hamway Engineering were, where Mr. Hamway recommended a 2-inch base course and a 1.5-inch top course. That was what our waiver went to. Before, our waiver for the base course and the top course was a little less than what Mr. Hamway had recommended. And so we changed our waiver request to meet what Mr. Hamway had recommended for the pavement thicknesses. Another item that we did take off,
What is he recommending?
2 inches of base course and 1.5 inches of top course. And so that's on our waiver request. We did change our waiver request to follow along from the recommendations of Hamway.
So you agree?
So we are both on the same page with regards to what his recommendation is and what we have proposed on the plan, yes.
Okay.
The other item that we did take off, before we were asking for a waiver on the size of the water service or water main that came into the site. Before we were showing a 6-inch coming into the site, now we're showing an 8-inch water main into the site. Part of it was that before we were showing a loop out behind the water district, and so we were just showing a 6-inch loop. Now we're showing a dead-end main, so we beefed up the size of the water service up to an 8-inch, so we wouldn't need a waiver anymore from that one item.
So what is it going to be?
An 8-inch water main.
So you concur?
Yes, yeah. Mr. Lorden had sat down with the water department a couple of times to go over the layout of the water system to make sure that Fran McNamara from the Water District was okay with the water layout. And so what's on the plan is what was agreed upon by Mr. Lorden and Fran McNamara.
We got any unresolvable battle zones here?
Not from my standpoint, and I don't want to speak for Fred, but I don't think there's anything from his standpoint. Like I said, him and I sat down on Friday, and I don't think there's any disagreements technically on...
Everybody's in agreement?
May I speak?
Of course.
Fred Hamway from Hamway Engineering. Everything's in agreement. Just to elaborate on the landscape, my understanding on landscape in a parking lot is to break up the sea of pavement, the sea of cars, just seeing nothing but cars. So I didn't think just grass, which isn't seen while the cars are parked, is what's considered interior landscaping. And as Wes talked about the water line, Fran McNamara did call me this morning and said that he's in agreement with the plan as shown, and as Gary had talked to him. So that's all set. The only other item I have is we haven't seen any details of street lights. That's the only thing.
The actual light,
Yes.
it's going to be consistent, it's LED lighting, and I'll do a touch
Okay.
of that.
That's the only thing that we haven't seen. Everything else that Wes has mentioned has been taken care of, agreed upon, worked back and forth, and so forth.
What's the issue on LED lighting?
Not an issue. We haven't.
Pardon?
Provide them with a cut sheet.
You have to,
I need to provide them with a cut sheet of the specific light that we're going to use at the post, a height of the post,
yeah,
and then the actual cut sheet, the LED light that we're going to be using.
okay. And the illumination quality and all of that stuff?
We'll have it on the cut sheet.
Yeah, okay.
That hasn't been submitted. Nothing with lighting. Just that there are going to be lights. So we're looking for some
So
information.
it's feedback information that you need to have?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other points? Are you?
No, that is
I'm going to
it.
turn it over to the board. I'm going to turn it over to the board. Stand by.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Go
There was
ahead.
an issue on hydrant location, not a big deal.
No, the fire chief asked that this one be moved over to the, as Wes had said, to the bulb here. That was the only thing. They all have the required spacing. He just wanted a little,
Fine.
when they enter, he wanted in what he felt was a more advantageous position.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
My question was on the, that hydrant now that you're putting in the bulb, how far is that from the street?
Well, there already is one at the beginning here.
No, I meant
Oh.
from, what you get, that's a major corner.
Right, that's-
Development. I'm just curious how far that you made that from the street.
Water scale.
From the, from that corner. that
From
bulb.
here. From here to here?
No, from the bulb to the, from the hydrant to the end of the, right there, that to the end of the bulb.
Into the boat.
Right at the edge?
It's right here, right now. But he wants it moved over.
I'm just looking at it, it's like right there when somebody comes in, hitting the hydrant.
And that's what they asked it to be. It's
All right, all right.
It's about 20, right, 20 feet, he's moving it.
So, but it's right there at that corner?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I know. Right, exactly. I'm wondering how long it's gonna take somebody to hit it, so that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I got a comment. In regards to the broken concrete driveways behind the building, I don't know if this has come up before, but those are going to have to be kept open in the wintertime, too. So I don't know if we need to incorporate that into our findings, or if that's already been taken care of, but obviously those are going to have to be maintained also.
Just so you know, we did incorporate in that snow storage plan. We do show those as being clear of the snow storage areas, so they would have to come in and obviously remove the snow
Right.
in that area. So,
Right, because the trucks needs access 12, yeah.
Yep, understandable.
It's a year, okay.
Okay. I guess the next on the list, we got the waiver list, we got pro forma. We're going to do pro forma first?
Now, the sewer fees.
Pardon?
Sewer fee. The sewer fees.
Excuse me, I didn't.
Sewer fee.
Well, you want to bring up the sewers right now? Okay. Is that what you're
Hash that
suggesting?
out at the workshop, no?
Okay, I'll take that in order. I was going to save that for the last. I thought we could get the gloves on and go to work. You sure that's the way you want to do it?
Well, you got the number.
I'd get it on the table as soon as you can.
Pardon?
Yes, I would suggest you do that.
Okay, I'll follow the leader.
Okay,
You're on.
we're on.
See, I've been overruled.
When are we going to hash this out at the workshop?
Well, I think last time we met, we had stated that we were going to go and have discussions and bring the sewer department into the discussion with regard to the requested waiver of the sewer fees. Gary and our pro forma analyst, Mike Jacobs, who was not able to be here tonight.
Yeah, that's the waiver for, what do I have it here? I made a note. I can't
think
probably recover it.
Previously, we were
It
looking,
was rather, 401, comma, 2.00.
That's the traffic.
Very precise number.
what was the original proposal, Gary, that we were going to pay? It was
211, I think it was.
211,000, roughly.
In that area.
But your lump sum number to make it economically feasible.
I read it on.
So we had 2 meetings with the sewer department.
Yeah, okay.
During the course of that, we made some changes to the pro forma to essentially bring that number up
A
to
little over 400, 401.
$401,000.
How much?
401,
$401,000.
$200. 401,000.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yes,
401, I wrote it down, 401, comma,
200.
I thought it was kind of a precise number. I was surprised it wasn't rounded off to 202. But go ahead.
So that's where we stand. I know when we had the meetings with the sewer department, they have submitted a recommendation to this board in which they feel that no additional fees should be waived. So we really were unable to reach any sort of consensus, as a result of that process. We've submitted 2 pro formas now, one of which shows that the project without these waivers is uneconomic, and the other one that shows that it's economic with the waivers. And that's where we stand.
So that's your position. Your position is you want a waiver of what the sewer commission is asking? If I'm out of order, straighten me out. But for it to be 401, 202,
That's correct.
200?
Correct.
That's what you're looking for?
Yes.
And that's in contrast with a number of something like 1,600,000. I don't know if they've rounded it off to precise numbers.
To start with, it was 1.6 million, a little over 1.6 million.
Okay.
To start with. They've worked it down to, I think, 1.4 million and some change.
$1,400,737.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I might as well write that down.
737.
Correct.
Was the recommended.
Yes, that's.
1,400,000, please?
1,400,737
Whose precise number was that?
was the recommendation.
Oh, they got even more precise. There you go, okay. The lines are drawn,
The lines are drawn.
and you're requesting at this point in time for this board to do what?
To grant a waiver to allow the sewer connection and privilege fees to be 401,000.
200. 401.
401,200.
I might at this point in time be appropriate if I could ask the sewer commissioner if that's an appropriate number they'd be happy with.
I could probably answer for him, but absolutely, you can let him come up.
Good evening, Carl Luck, Sewer Commission. I'm sure we agree on this point, that the Sewer Commission...
I want you to talk, you got a soft voice, so I want you to talk loud and crisp, because every word you say from now on is very important.
Well, they always have been done. Okay, I hope everyone can hear me now. Yeah, this very precise number was based on a very precise and straightforward calculation of what the sewer fees would be effective the date of the original application in 2008. So it's a straight calculation of what anyone paying fees on that date would have had to pay, and it's our understanding, at least as of now, is that that's the relevant date to calculate the fees on. So this is a straight calculation, and it comprises two parts. One is the privilege fee, which is the $1,276,437, and then for connection fees, $124,300. There really isn't much else to say. That's a straight calculation. The 401, we don't really acknowledge it's not based on any should cost. It's based on a number that is backed into to meet a certain theoretical profit. So it's really nothing to do with the Sewer Commission.
Those fees, see, you got to straighten me out, because I find it strange that you come up with a very precise number. Because in general, you got the what do you call them? Not the betterment, but the, help me with the word.
Yeah, well, there was an original betterment, which is a straight calculation of the cost of the sewer, the first phase of sewer. A certain amount of that betterment, which was roughly $13 million cost, was set aside for future privilege fees. The rest of the betterment was divided by the number of units that were assessed at that time, which was roughly 1,000. So the privilege fee was the betterment fee was an exact calculation of cost divided by units. So that's why it's the $11,551.47 was the betterment. We have in our regulations, and we have consistently since that betterment, charged privilege fees that are equal to the betterment. So that's a straight calculation. The number of unit calculation in this case is a little bit more complicated, because 3-room apartments are half a unit, and then the 4 rooms are a full unit. So it ends up being 110.5 units times the privilege fee, which equals the betterment, which is the $11,551.47. So the 1.2 million is a straight calculation. It was effective at that time, and it's still the same number today, so that's not dependent on when the application came in. The connection fees are dependent on when the application came in. Back on the date of the application, they were $1,760, I believe, per unit. And for apartments, it was a little more complex of a calculation. It's per building plus excessive bedrooms. So that calculation was done consistent with that. Since then, the connection fee has increased to $2,250 per unit, but we're not using that in this calculation. We're using the connection fee that was effective on the date of the application, which was September of '08. So again, it's a straightforward calculation. Today, there are other fees at different points, and that's why in the memo we identified, because there was some discussion that the ZBA may have a different opinion of what the effective application date is, or complete application or so forth. So we gave you what the calculation would be in September of 2008, which is what we believe the original application was. There were fee changes on the connection fee in June of 2013. So that would be a little bit more money. And then in September of 2013, an I&I fee was also incorporated. So that would bring it up, the fee again, if for some reason the September of 2013 was considered to be the relevant application date. But using the original application, the $1.4 million is the appropriate fee to pay, unless this board decides to do something different. But there was no, we were, you know, given this offer at the meeting, this $401,000, but again, it wasn't based on anything other than that's what it takes to meet a certain profit margin. There was no discussion on the relevance of which fees were or were not relevant. It was strictly, here's an offer because it's what we need, so.
There's no quantity discount.
I'm sorry?
There's no quantity discount.
No.
In other words,
the more units, the more, you know what?
What confuses me a little bit is, right now, if the site was not on the table, you have your privilege fees that are standard for anybody who puts up a house. That's the privilege fee, if they're coming by the existing line.
Right.
So you have the existing lines, in this case, come in. So now if you put in 5 units or 120 modular unit people, 120 residents, then your position is that they should be served equally with the same fee for each of the 120 units of those dollars. So there's no before the project starts and when the project ends, what is your out-of-pocket cost?
Well, there is no discount. Remember, as I said to begin with, that at the beginning of the project, not all of the cost was put into the betterment. So we are still trying to recover cost of the original fee. So it's all out of pocket as of now. We've spent the money to put the system in, and we don't have enough people connected.
So you've got a debt that's sitting out there someplace?
We certainly do.
What is that debt called? In other words, if I go back in history, we're going to put sewer in, this is before you even became associated with the sewers, but we're going to put sewers in for $8,000. Turned out that was an absurd figure.
Right.
And when push came to shove, whoever those people were, you know, the appropriate, they were selectmen, I think, at the time.
Right.
Then what they did is they come out with a number, but it wasn't like the total number. It was brought up to be an acceptable number. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But then there was a chunk of change owed someplace, and what is that called?
Yeah.
That pocket of change that was kicked down the can in the future. Is that a good word? I've heard that politically lately.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there was when the selectmen were the sewer commission and the project was getting started, there was a expectation set
growth
of less than $10,000. Actually, $5,000 was the original expectation.
Right.
But the costs weren't in. When the sewer commission was separated from the board of selectmen, and I was there at the time when the betterments were established, and we brought in, people and said, okay, how many units, how many people are on the sewer lines? And it was roughly 1,000 people, just a little under 1,000 people or 1,000 units to be assessed. As I said, it was a $13 million total cost. So we knew the total cost. The project was closed. The total cost was $13 million. we assessed out to all of the people paying betterments roughly $11 million. So there was $2.6 million that was not assessed that we are carrying, and that we fully expect with developments like this, you know, as new developments come on board that have not been bettered, then they will pay a privilege fee, and that's how we will recover that extra $2.6 million.
Now, I'm slightly confused. Is there a note or something that, in other words, because if you've gotten this much money, that sits out as a note or a bond?
Yeah, it was a loan. It was a SRF loan that's being paid. Some people, fortunately, chose not to take 20 years to pay every month. Some people paid up front. So that helps a lot with the payments. And so we don't, you know, we're not in a difficult position.
So you're suggesting that the 13,000, 12,007, whatever the number is here,
11,000, yes.
is you're assessing that as the equal burden that's already put upon all of the people that are in the system?
Exactly, exactly.
So you're saying it matters not that you have to pay a nickel. You don't have to do anything because it's there, and then the lines are there, and all they do is put 5 lines over, which the applicant is going to put over to plug in to the units, and then there's going to be 120. Now, part of that operating cost is not the wastewater. We have fancier terms than that, but we won't use it here. But that's not part of this charge, because
No.
that's separate,
No,
right?
the $11,000 is strictly the cost to put the system in the ground. And they will now benefit from
Okay.
that. So just like the people who've paid so far, every new user has to pay that same amount as if they were there on day one when the betterment got established.
So you're saying, without blinking an eye, that this is the cost, and it matters not whether you put a nickel into developing it, but you feel that anybody, any development or anything in the here now and into the future is going to be that the privilege fee. Everybody. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, they didn't put a nickel in. We've already spent all the money. We just are trying to recover it now.
So it's time for...
It's time for whoever connects to pay their fair share of this load that we've been carrying on their behalf, hoping that they would come.
But if they go away...
If they go away, then...
Then what do? You're back...
The next development that gets developed, we assess privilege fees.
For another
Well,
development.
there are extensions, you know, ongoing almost continuously. They're not big extensions like this, but every extension, whether it be private or we do it, every extension pays a privilege fee. Lancaster Ave, for instance, they paid privilege fees. They were a private extension, but they all paid privilege fees.
So you have no control over if nobody comes, if there's no buyers, then you're stuck with this note that has to be, where does that money have to be put? Additionally upon the users?
Exactly.
So if
There's
these
no other
folks
place. We
go
have no
away,
other
then
source.
the users have got an incremental upgrade, an uptick on their cost now, or not, or is it you stand by and wait? And I'm trying to understand it, because if you look at it simplistically, you would say these folks, they're not going to. You don't need to spend another nickel to put them on the system, and the wastewater that'll be generated as a function of all of those units, the 120, is a separate cost factor, so that's not on the way. So then we're challenged with the applicant coming here and saying, I want to put 120 units. I do my pro forma. I come out, and all of a sudden, whacking he gets 1.6 million. He does his calculations, and he says, I can't make it. I can't make it within the profit line.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you say, I understand your problem, because you're a thinking person, and I understand that. You look like a tough one right now.
I don't think I have a problem.
But the...
Chairman, could I...
Am I talking too much?
No, I'd like to shed some light on this issue, because I think you're kind of veering off into some legal principles.
I'm having tough time
Yeah.
putting it together logically.
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's important
Please
to...
take over.
Sure. It's important to understand that this is all governed by state law. This isn't the sewer commission saying we want to impose a sewer betterment. They don't have the discretion to essentially change the rules. The town of Lunenburg in 2001 or 2000, when the town decided to create the sewer network in the town, it had a choice of funding this either through general taxation or through a betterment process. And every town has that option when you're building utilities like this. And for better or worse, the town chose to fund this through a betterment process. So it's not like a road where there's no betterments. Everyone benefits from a road. Roads are paid for out of the general fund through taxation. So if Gary puts in 120 units on Whalum Road, he doesn't have to pay a nickel to have access to the road, nor is the town spending money to have him access the road because it's already built, but the cost of the road was shared equally by every taxpayer and continue to be shared by taxpayers for the maintenance. The sewer betterment is different because when people on Whalum Road were hit with the $11,000 bill, they were uniquely hit for a betterment, whereas Gary's predecessor in title wasn't. He was hit for maybe one or two betterments or whatever it was, not 120. So it's a matter of fairness that the costs of the sewer system be spread out among all the users. And I think what Carl is trying to say is it's perfectly common and actually lawful to reserve a portion of your sewer fund construction budget for privilege fees that occur in the future so that every user is paying their fair share. Otherwise, it would be incredibly unfair if I live next door to this site and I paid $11,000 to hook up my house, and then 120 people move in next door and none of them pay a cent. It's just a matter of fairness. And in fact, there's actually there's case law and constitutional law which suggests that this has to be the way it is. That everyone has to pay their fair share when we're talking about betterments. So it's not really discretionary. And we actually argued in the Hollis Hills case that, as you may recall, we didn't waive betterments. We wanted to charge the full betterments on Hollis Hills, through our litigation at least. And we argued to the Housing Appeals Committee and ultimately to the Supreme Judicial Court that under 40B, we had no ability to waive these privilege fees because state law demanded that everyone be treated fairly. Now, we lost that argument. Unfortunately, the courts did not agree. They thought that 40B had the ability to override what I believe to be a state law principle. But that's the issue here. The issue really isn't, I mean, if this wasn't a 40B, I don't think we'd be having this debate because it's a matter of fairness. The question really before the board is, now that we're faced with a 40B, and we know that the Housing Appeals Committee and the SJC says that privilege fees can be waived under 40B. It's not a state law, it's a local law. We have to decide whether or not it's appropriate to waive these fees, if at all, maybe some, maybe none, for this project. And what you folks did 3 years ago, what we did the first time was we waived the fees for the affordable units and one market unit, I believe. But we imposed the privilege fee for all the rest of the market units. And the waiver was done because there was a concession given by the developer at the time because he was going to be putting in sewer works on Pleasant View. But now that that's not happening, I believe...
Just a minute,
Yeah.
I don't want to miss a point. Did you have reduced the cost for the affordables, for the 25%?
There is no 25%.
You made the point where you could reduce it for the 40B component?
In the previous decision that you issued in,
Okay,
was it 08? No, not 08, 2010. The original decision that we issued in this case waived the sewer privilege fees for the affordable units.
Yeah.
Because that was a for sale project, and so the 25% affordable. So we waived the fees for the affordable units, but charged the fee for the market rate units.
Okay.
What Mr. Lorden has asked, I'm not sure where the 400,000 number comes from. I don't know. Maybe there's a basis for it. Originally, he was asking for basically a waiver, and he would be willing to pay 5 privilege fees for this revised project. But what the Sewer Commission is saying is, no, we actually think we should be imposing privilege fees on every single unit, because we're not getting the concessions that we got last time. Last time we got these concessions in that sewer works were being built for the town, and that was a benefit for the neighbors in Pleasant View. We're not getting that now with this, so the sewer commission is saying, we see no reason to waive this. Now, the economics argument is really separate, and the sewer commission doesn't have the benefit of having the economic analysis. Frankly, none of us do, because we just got it on Monday. So having this debate tonight probably isn't all that efficient. I mean, I think it's wonderful to hear each side, but I think we're going to have to continue the hearing, and I've already discussed this with Mr. Haverty, that we simply don't have, we just got the information from Mr. Jacobs. I would like to see a report from Mr. Heaton so we can synthesize these two polar opposite opinions and figure out who's right, who's wrong, and so that you guys have some guidance that you can use to make a decision.
You know, it began to look like we were going to have to throw a dart in the wall and say that's a nice number. If we, you know, in other words, somewhere between 400,000 not knowing and 1.4 million, say, well, Jesus, okay, well, I like 900,000 as a board, as a recommendation. That seems like it'd be a good number, a little blood either side.
Yeah,
but that's not the way you should do
Right,
business.
exactly. My strong recommendation is to attack this methodically and have a basis for whatever number you decide. It should be, you know, for example, last time we agreed to waive it for 25% of the units. You need to make a similar kind of judgment call in this case.
Mr. Chairman?
I have a, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask, can we ask the basis of the 40100?
So the first meeting that we had with the sewer department, it was asked for us to come in with a number that was basically the most that we could pay without rendering the project uneconomic. So we went back, did some additional work on the pro forma, looked at the numbers, and that's what it came out to. Then when we had the second meeting with the sewer commission, essentially we were told, we really don't want to get into the pro forma issues. It's outside of our jurisdiction. It's not something we really should be reviewing. And we respectfully agreed with them and said, that's fine. Let's not spend too much time getting into why we have this number. But it's not a number that was just picked out of thin air. It was the number that our pro forma analyst working with Mr. Lorden was able to determine is the highest that they could pay and still have an economic project under the state guidelines. I struggle a little bit with some of the dates with regard to the sewer commission fees, what is applicable and what isn't applicable. I've gone through the Hollis Hills decision and it raises additional questions for me. I would point out one thing, and that was with regard to the connection fee. That decision is pretty clear that it didn't go in effect until December 2008. We filed our application in September 2008, so the connection fee actually should be, I believe, zero, or $30 a unit, something silly small. There's also language within that decision that suggests that the privilege fee hadn't been properly adopted prior to May 2, 2009. I haven't had the benefit of seeing all of the information that was submitted as part of that hearing process, and quite frankly, I was hoping to avoid having to go in and look it all up. I was hoping we could come to some sort of resolution on the issue. But that's something else that we would have to take into consideration if we're not able to come to some sort of a consensus. And then the third thing, talking about what the sewer department has the right to do and not to do, the Hollis Hills decision makes it very clear that for the Emerald Place project, which was a market rate project, it was not an affordable project, that they only charge privilege fees for 45 out of 240 units. So if you follow that model for this project...
Wasn't that a little bit different, the Emerald Place, relative to the connections in the existing sewers, relative to the adjacent
Because I haven't had the opportunity to review all of the underlying information that was submitted to the
Just take it
HAC.
out of context without looking at the background.
I mean, it's difficult for me to answer those questions, but it makes it clear that a market rate project was given a pretty steep discount with regard to those privilege fees. It raises the question that why would an affordable project be treated differently? And Gary was pointing out to me as we were talking about these numbers in terms of the total amount of the sewer costs, that this project would essentially be carrying almost 10% of the total sewer cost by making them pay $1.4 million out of a $13 million sewer cost. So when we're talking about issues of fundamental fairness, I'm not quite sure that is either.
It's pretty obvious, though. I mean, we've divided the number of users by the number of, we divided by the costs, and that's how they came up with the number. So if 10% is not the correct number, then obviously we've done a math error. But I'm pretty sure that was calculated in such a way that your 120 units would represent or if it is 10% of the total project cost.
Well, essentially it's turning out as to a windfall to the town to have a project come in, on a lot that was figured to have, I don't even know how many betterment units were charged against it, but then to have it come in at 120, obviously is going to be bringing in a lot more in fees than was ever anticipated by the town, which theoretically could result in collecting more than what the cost of the sewer project was.
So,
if everyone else has already paid betterment fees, and then you've got somebody come in towards the end of the line, and they're getting charged for 120 when they were only factored into, say, 4, you're collecting a lot more than you had originally anticipated.
Well, that's fine, but every unit is still paying the same amount. Do you agree with that?
Oh, based on that formula, every unit's paying.
So it's not like, it's still fair. We may be collecting more. If the population growth in Lunenburg exceeds the projections that were made in 2000, then you might be right. We might collect more. The tolls on the Mass Pike have been on the Mass Pike for many more years beyond what they're supposed to. They've collected a lot more in tolls in the Mass Pike to pay for the Mass Pike tenfold.
I'm not sure that's making your point, though. They should have closed that down years ago.
My point is exactly this. It's legal.
I'd like to ask the sewer commission just one thing. Is basically I just need some clarification on the betterments and this privilege fees. My understanding is that you basically came up with the numbers. You calculated how many households you felt the amount of sewer you were given was going to be able to service. And then you took it, and then you went from there, and you figure out how much it would be for each one of those households.
No, I'm sorry. There's a number of sort of misleading statements being made here. Again, the original cost of the system was $13 million.
Right.
It was apportioned. There were almost 1,000 units that were established at that time. We went through everything, every place the pipe went by. We said, will this lot support 1 unit, 2 units? How much frontage does it have? It was a very detailed process. We said, how many people will be served immediately and should share the cost immediately? We didn't divide that 1,000 into 13 million. We said, we know that there are situations, there are parcels of land that are for sure going to be subdivided. There are big, and this is a good example of one. The big parcel of land on the sewer has the right to connect, that there's going to be a lot more people. We essentially set aside roughly 250 units.
Okay.
Right? This is 120 of them. Not even 120, because the calculation is 110.
Right.
So it is paying exactly its fair share of the total initial cost, as if it were there at the time. If it was sitting there when we put the sewer in, this is what it would have paid.
Okay. Can I ask though, is there a certain max number that the town can handle on that sewer?
There's always a max, of course there is. I think it's probably pretty big. It's mostly gravity sewer. There are pumps and so forth. But it's established. When we hit, the other thing that's misleading, when that betterment is paid off, when that 13 million is paid off, we don't just keep collecting and it's a windfall. There is no windfall here. There is trying to recover the cost of the system and treat everyone who's going to benefit from it fairly. And that's the simple, basic principle.
If you went, the total town was 100%, what happens at the critical threshold that the debt is paid? What then happens to all of the other
someone
people?
else comes in and connects, they don't have to pay a privilege fee.
Is that fair?
Because we paid off you paid the debt off. There is no more debt. That's
so that's
the law,
a
is my
trigger
understanding.
point. So if you had, you can say right now how many more you need to cut it off.
Yeah, it's a few
so
hundred
if these
units.
folks waited until you fill them up, then they'd be clean.
Sure.
Is that right?
That's their privilege. Yeah.
So what
I
is
don't know
hap-
when it'll be paid off.
Has there been any change in this betterment fee since it started?
Nope, that was the betterment that was assessed. That 11,000 was calculated based on the number of units and the amount we were going to apportion at the time, which was roughly 11
Still
million.
the same today as it was on day one?
It's the only thing, and it's the privilege fee until there's another betterment, and then that privilege fee will always equal the prior betterment. In this case, the prior betterment is the only betterment, it's the 11,000.
So that's...
So it's just fair. I mean, we need to be fair to our users. This is not spread over the town. Any costs here lie at the feet of the user base. So if any fees here get waived for some reason, and the other thing I'd like to comment to is, we did not just waive fees for affordable units in the first go-around. There was a concession made, an agreement made, that if Pleasant View Ave was sewered, we would make a concession. Just like in any other waiver that hopefully the town does, a waiver is given when it's in the best interest of the residents, or in this case, the sewer users. That was in the best case of the sewer users to provide that waiver. And it was quite frankly, and I was in the meetings, it was somewhat arbitrarily tied to affordable units. It was simply an amount of money that was waived because we were going to get a concession and our users would benefit.
So you're suggesting that if this ended up at Hack, and you hold rightly so to your numbers, then they go and they visit Hack, and Hack says it's in the best interest of the affordable housing that we waive or delete or eliminate all cost. That's the path that we go down? I turn to my attorney and...
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Well,
I didn't either.
I'm saying, you talk about waivers and so forth from the best interest of the town. You spoke to the issue. So if it stands that the fees that he's presenting are perfectly legitimate and should be imposed, if this board were to think that way, that then the applicants now goes to Hack. And then Hack comes up with one of their wonderful thoughts of saying it's in the best interest in the town of Lunenburg that to get affordable housing, that we waive all cost. That's a road that could happen, right?
Right. There's actually two issues here.
Yeah, because we need to know where we're going.
The first issue is, are these fees legitimate?
Right.
Are they legitimate legal fees to charge? And the second issue is,
Yeah,
if the answer is yes...
The sewer department right is what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
exactly,
they're right.
precisely. They're standing strong in a right domain for what they have.
Right.
Okay.
And then if the answer is yes, then the second question is, are these fees rendering the project uneconomic? Now, we
Right.
didn't get to that one in Hollis Hills because we lost on the issue of the applicability of the sewer fees because of these dates. So I'd like to address that because Paul started talking about that.
Right.
So what Hollis Hills said, what the decision was in Hollis Hills was that the connection fee was not properly adopted until December of '08. Now, that's what the HAC said, and that wasn't overturned. So that's a finding that the Housing Appeals Committee made. So if you accept the proposition that you can only charge fees that were in existence as of September of '08, which I don't think is, that's their argument. I wouldn't say that that's a completely solid argument, but that's their argument. If you accept that, then you shouldn't impose the $17.60 per unit connection fee. I believe at the time it was 125, or there was...
It's in the decision.
There was something meaningful. It wasn't simply $5. I think there was a meaningful number. So that's one issue. Can we charge $17.60? Okay. The second issue is the privilege fee. Is that lawful to this project? And the answer is yes, because the privilege fee was adopted, it was codified in the town's general bylaws on May 5th, 2007. I don't know where the 09 comes from. So the problem with Hollis Hills is the Hollis Hills application came in 06. And we tried to argue that we had this privilege fee going back earlier than that because the Board of Selectmen had adopted it as a policy or a regulation. But the Housing Appeals Committee split hairs and said, we don't consider that regulation to be valid, and we think that the town lawfully adopted this in '07, which would have been after the application date. So that's why we lost the privilege fee in Hollis Hills. Since this project came in '08, at the earliest, I don't think there's any question that the privilege fee would apply. There may be a question on the legality of the connection fee, although I think it's fair for the board to make an argument that it applies. And in terms of, we started debating this sort of policy question of, is it fair that this project has to pay $1 million in fees, and then once the debt is paid off, no one pays any privilege fees? I don't think this is a proper debate for this project, because again, this is the law. This isn't the sewer commission.
We need to understand
This is state law.
The elements, though.
Right, but state law says you can do this. State law says you can impose privilege fees, and if Carl's correct, I'm not sure what the law says in terms of what happens when the debt's paid off. I'm not sure that they have to take it away. I think there's options. But in any event, whatever the law says, the law says. So you don't have to worry about, making an exception or treating this applicant unfairly. We have to treat this applicant in accordance with what the law says. If some other applicant was here not under 40B, I don't think you'd be having this conversation. If this is a 120-unit project under conventional zoning, I don't think you'd be saying, gee, I don't think it's fair to impose this privilege fee because it's $1 million and they seem to be carrying more of the weight. The law says what the law says. So I think what the board should be focusing on is making sure we have legal grounds to impose these fees or apply them at least to the project. And then second, is it economic?
Mr. Chairman, if I can address that quickly. The issue of whether or not the fees are being applied in a fair manner actually is extremely important because this is a 40B. And one of the issues in both the statute and the regulations is you cannot subject affordable housing to unequal treatment from market rate housing. And as I brought up, the Hollis Hills decision makes it very clear that sewer privilege fees for almost 200 units were waived on the Emerald Place project for a market rate development. So one argument that we would certainly wind up making is that we're being treated unequally from that development. The other point I wanted to make was that the Hollis Hills decision also states, the board argues that under Chapter 83 it has the authority to impose a sewer privilege fee. However, the town has taken a position which suggests the town did not believe it had valid authority to charge sewer privilege fees. At the May 2, 2009 annual town meeting, the town adopted a bylaw authorizing the selectmen to petition the legislature to authorize Lunenburg to charge sewer privilege fees to landowners who had not been charged a betterment fee. So, and I'm not saying that that is cut and dry, that it wasn't validly in place prior to the time that we filed our application, but it certainly raises some questions, and it's certainly something that we would need to explore, if we ever got to that point. But once again, I'm hoping that that doesn't have to happen.
Who waived the fees for the Emerald Hill?
I would presume it was the sewer.
This is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't a 40B, it was a private project. It didn't come before this board, so who waived the fees?
There's no waiver.
That's what
we researched this thoroughly as part of the Hollis Hills case. I can provide a brief to the board for the next meeting what happened in Emerald Place. There was an agreement reached between the developers and the town because Emerald Place is in a location where there was already sewer there. There was sewer already built in that location for the amusement park, I believe. Is that right? I mean, you guys.
Right, that's what used to be there.
I don't live here,
Yeah.
so I believe.
And it also was tied to another town at the same time.
Yes,
That's so-
exactly.
Well, part of that development's in them.
Part of that project, part of that property where the amusement park was and where Emerald Place is today, was being serviced directly by Lemonster.
Lemonster.
Other sewer works on that site were in existence, and then other parts of the site where there's condos, the sewer was not there. So there was a line drawn on a plan that said this piece of the property where there's new condos, where there's no existing sewer, will pay a betterment. These condos are being served by existing sewer, so it would not be correct to impose a betterment on them. That is what happened. There was no waiver of any fees.
So what that says, if I understood you correctly, is that there comes a point in time when the betterment fee goes away, it doesn't stay in place forever.
I'm not sure. I honestly don't know what the answer is. Carl probably has more knowledge than I do on this, but regardless of what the result is, if in fact that is the result, the privilege fee goes away, it may seem unfair, but we're not treating this project differently than we would treat a conventional project, because the law applies to all projects. So there isn't unequal treatment.
Since this is a rental, all these units are counted towards our requirement for housing?
Right now it is.
All right, so we were waiving previously the handicap units, the affordable units. So all of these units are affordable now, correct?
No, only.
I mean, it's in the eyes of the state, because they're all being counted towards our
They all
total
count on the
for
subsidized housing.
affordable housing in the state, right?
They all count.
So isn't the town getting a benefit from this by that virtue?
It's 25% affordable, in this case, out of they all count, but how many is affordable?
They're at affordable renting.
You gotta get up.
They're at an affordable rented
You've been
rate.
sitting too long.
It's 25%, Mr. Chairman.
And they're at affordable means they're at a discounted rate for the rent, but 100% is attributed to your account.
But, and what percentage is reducing the rent?
25%.
25, so it's same as we're used to, the 25%.
Yes, but with the
But
exception that-
100% counted.
100% counts.
That's the sweetener for the town to get that 250 units.
So out of those that you're saying, the 25% that you're classifying as affordable rent, based on the formula we've given you of 1 bedroom is a half, 2 bedroom is 1, what is the number of units?
110.
No, that's not the question.
Okay,
The
sorry.
question is, out of the 25% that you just told me that are gonna be lower rent, affordable rent, than the rest of them, what does that number come out to be? How many 1 bedrooms, how many 2 bedrooms are going to be under that classification?
It's got to be an equal number.
Yeah, it's on a proportion.
25% of, I mean, I don't know, what are the totals?
25% of the
Ones, twos, and threes?
total 1 bedrooms.
25%
And
of the
25%
twos.
of the 2 bedrooms.
I said, what's the total 1 bedroom?
There's, in a 24-unit building, it's 6 and 22. 6 ones and 3 1-bedrooms and 21 2-bedrooms.
And how many buildings are there?
Pardon me?
How many buildings are there?
There are 5 buildings.
So it's
So
15.
3 is 15, 25% of 15 is 4? I mean, is we gonna be over 25, we'd be under 25? I'm just trying to come up with a number. I'm trying to come up with a
go
number. If we're
last.
gonna say, if you wanted to say a number is 25% is affordable, rent-wise, what that turns out to be based on the sewer commission's figure for numbers, what that number is. Sewer commission saying 110 and a half units you're gonna be charged. How many of them are you saying you're gonna be, how many of that 110 and a half are you gonna consider
I think
affordable?
he's saying 25% of 110. That-
So roughly
I-
27
the way
units.
that- Sorry, but the way the calculation works, it should be 25% of the total, so 25% of the 110 and a half.
Okay, so that comes to
Because they're equally apportioned.
27 and
27 and 3/4 units or something like that, right, so some ridiculous
In a
number.
spare bathroom.
Okay. And based on your numbers, roughly how many, just a rough idea, so you're saying 11,000, blah, 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 per unit? Per unit, right. So we're talking about 220, 200 and...
Well, at least 250.
And
maybe
if
270.
I might, on one thing that we touched upon earlier, if the logic of when it gets to 0, it disappears, obviously it just doesn't get to 0 and disappear, it would incrementally lessen. The rate would lessen, so if you had 1,000 to start with, obviously if you get to 2,000 as your count and your investment is still the same, that number should divide in half, and then so on. As more come on the line, you'd have to add the cost of the infrastructure, the cost total, and divide by that total number. So it would seem unfair to say that if you stay with 1,000 homes to start with, that it would be 1,000 all the way. If you add 2,000 homes to it, it would divide incrementally that way. It wouldn't just drop to 0.
So what are you proposing, that you give back to people who already paid then?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it would incrementally drop. Instead
was
of saying
wondering that.
when you get to 0, everybody pays 0, which may be the case.
I like how,
As you come down the ladder, your rates would drop to maybe 5,000, and then
Yeah, but
3 years later, drop to
how is that
3,000.
how is that making it fair for the folks that already paid 11?
Well,
You know,
and then you'd
yes.
have to ask.
They've been using the sewer longer.
It's not a question of fairness, it's a matter of law.
We
But
can't
I don't know
rewrite
if
the
you can do
rules.
that.
Right, and if you took a
No, when the
look at
loan's
Emerald
paid off,
Place,
the loan's
all of
paid
those
off.
residents
You would
were
have
in
to-
the town of
right, but
Lunenburg.
that would have to be called
And
something
Lunenburg
else
has that
other
as
than
their bylaw or their law.
Right, but it would be.
Why wouldn't they be subject to it? Or even over at Tri-City, the town allowed them to run a quarter of a mile, run the sewer down to get to Fitchburg so they could pay Fitchburg the fees instead of Lunenburg the fees. It seems as though everybody would pay the same to the town of Lunenburg because the residences are in Lunenburg. And my flow goes to Leominster as well as Emerald Place's flow. Ultimately, all their units flow to Leominster. So they could simply just cluster all of their units onto the Leominster side to avoid paying Lunenburg any fees, because Leominster fees are less than Lunenburg. As I mentioned before, if the project was built in Fitchburg, the total fee would be $120,000, I believe it was, and in Leominster it'd be $160,000. But in Lunenburg, it's $1,006,000.
I have a couple of questions. Carl, you wanted to respond to the last comment.
Yeah, I don't know which of all of those things to respond to, quite frankly, because there was a lot of strange information there.
Speak louder, please, Carl.
I mean, it's the law, and it's our bylaw. We essentially, when we set up the original payment, we essentially said that we are counting on roughly 1,250 units being served. And that's how many it will take us to pay down that cost. We had 1,000 on day one. We've had a few come in over the period. This is maybe another 120. We are still far away from getting enough people to pay the upfront costs for the loans we already have out. And if they don't get paid off by those people, and the payments start coming in quicker than we have cash flow going out, then the current users will end up subsidizing this development. And that's not right. If this board chooses to do something else financially for other reasons, then that's fine, and that should be on the town, not on the sewer users' backs. They've paid their share. They should not have to pay the share for someone else coming in. Thank you.
Okay.
So just to reference back to the Emerald Place and that it's going through to Leominster, so if we connect directly to Leominster rather than connecting into the Lunenburg system, then I presume there'd be no sewer privilege fee or any sort of sewer fees here in Lunenburg?
You couldn't do that.
Why?
It's not allowed.
Says who?
I abut the Leominster line.
I've done it in other projects. You've been involved in one. We did it in Linfield. We ran a private sewer line down Route 1.
So you're saying go in the back of your property down where the F&L right-of-way is? Go down
No, I could do it that way, or I could go through, I could purchase a property and go, because I abut Leominster line. I abut the Leominster line, and it was they allowed Tri-City to run from Lunenburg to Fitchburg. They allowed the contractor, even though there was sewer right in front of the project, they allowed them to go at least a quarter of a mile down the road and tie directly into the sewer main of Fitchburg so that they could pay the Fitchburg rates.
What's that, on Route 13?
On Summer Street. The developer was allowed to run down Summer Street.
We did another one where they went through Lunenburg to get into, I think you're aware of that one.
Yes, if I may. Tri-Town Landing connects to sewer, you're exactly right, directly to Fitchburg, not through us. Tri-Town Landing came to the Sewer Commission, which is the proper way to go, and asked the Sewer Commission if they could talk to Fitchburg. And the Sewer Commission said, yes, you can talk to Fitchburg. Without any further communication, the Tri-Town Landing got permission from Fitchburg to connect, which wasn't right. That has been corrected. We now have, in the municipal agreement, we have that they are not allowed to connect anyone in Lunenburg without the permission of the Lunenburg Sewer Commission. So that back door, has been closed. And the same process could be used. If possible, it could come to the Sewer Commission and ask if it could be connected to Leominster, and we would see what that means and what that would cost, or what the implications of that are, but that hasn't been asked for. And it's certainly free to ask for that.
It's literally just a question that popped into my
I
mind
just-
as we were sitting here.
Fair question.
Can I ask a question, though, of Mr. Luck? I mean, what would the pros and cons be for the sewer commission, for the town, if they elect to explore that option? In other words, if they choose to connect directly to Leominster, is there a detriment to the town?
Well, clearly, I hope it doesn't seem this way, that we're against the project. We're very much for the project because we need more users, because that will help our user base and spread our overhead costs. So we would,
So you'd lose...
we would not be too encouraged to allow people to connect, and that's why we made this agreement.
So you'd lose revenue from
We'd lose
privilege
operating
fees,
revenue, right.
But would you be saving strain and maintenance and so forth that otherwise would come along?
Just the normal overhead that might come with it. Fortunately, the sewer system design is a good one. There's no new pump stations required, so we would expect the incremental operating costs to be fairly low with this project.
And what are the sewer commission's fees to hook up, to add sewage to under the intermunicipal agreement? How much more do you have to pay to Leominster for each unit that you hook up?
It's a good question. It's much more than the number was mentioned before. I think it's under $1,000, but there is out-of-pocket cost for connections.
So your connection fee was meant to cover that cost, correct?
Yeah, the connections, nothing to do with the overhead, but the connections, the inspections, and to pay the relevant town.
Right.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that Leominster is charging Lunenburg more to connect than they charge their own
It
residents.
sounds like maybe they are, I don't know. But we have a municipal agreement, so it is what it is, unfortunately.
They're going to make money off you guys.
Yeah, Mr. Luck, I got a question
Makes
for you,
sense.
if I could.
Yes, sir.
The agreement you just referenced with Fitchburg, do you have a similar agreement with Leominster?
We have not yet updated the agreement with Leominster. I'm not sure what language is in there relative to direct connections. I'm not sure that there's any language in there relative to direct connections.
So as it stands, there's no prohibition from them connecting to Leominster because you don't have any verbiage
I don't know.
saying that?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the Leominster IMA recently.
Would you think perhaps, like you said, it's all about money, it's all about users, I understand that, but would the sewer commissioner be better off getting 400,000 than no 100,000s? I know you're looking for $1.4 million, but if you got whatever the number is, isn't that better than perhaps them investigating, connecting directly to Leominster? I mean, you've had, like you said, you're looking for money, you're looking for users. You're going to be cutting yourself out of the user link here if you're asking this amount that they feel is unreasonable. I'm just throwing that out there.
That question a different way, which is, you made the statement, that the more users, the lower the rates are for everybody, irrespective of the privilege fee. Is that correct?
Yeah, the privilege fee is strictly to pay off the loan.
Right. So, but the fact that just having additional users, the additional 120 users, is going to be a benefit itself to the other users because it's going to lower their rates.
It'll help control the rates. I wouldn't
Okay, fine,
advertise
that's fine,
lowering
yes.
rates.
It's going to have a positive impact to have those additional users.
It helps absorb
irrespective
overhead.
of the privilege
Absolutely,
fees.
absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
That's why I hope we find a way.
And again, this is not something that has ever come up before tonight, and our preference is absolutely to connect through Lunenburg, rather than add additional hurdles in our way. The discussion sort of took it in that direction, and I just had a flash.
Time for a steady hand. You got any comments?
Sum us up, help us out.
Well, I wouldn't, if it's appropriate, I would make some comments on the pro forma now. If we've had, just finished with the discussion.
Comment away.
Oh, team shift, that's what you did, huh? I know why you did.
Just with the caveat that our pro forma analyst is not here, and I am not by any means a financial expert, so he's going to raise issues that I may not be able to directly respond to tonight, but I'd be more than happy to have Mr. Jacobs here at the next meeting.
So are we just kicking the sewer fee down the road now? We're not going to resolve that right now, or what was your intention, Doug?
Well, I don't intend to do that, no. I think if there are any other questions or comments that folks have on the sewer fees, get them on the table now.
I think, Paul, to sort of answer your question, I think we can't really make any decisions without having the economic analysis. And as much as intelligent as Paul is on economics, Mike
No, I'm not.
Jacobs.
That's why I became a lawyer. I hate numbers.
Right. We don't do math, right?
Oh, when it's billing time, you fellas do math, right?
So
But that's why they always round to the 15, you know?
That's the one thing I did learn, always round up.
Yeah, round up.
I mean, I think it would be probably more appropriate to postpone the economic discussion personally.
Either one's fine with me. Like I said, I won't be able to give you much in the way of insight onto, your comments.
Okay.
So,
I would think if you said that Mike will be able to attend the next meeting.
I don't know when the next meeting will be yet, but I will do everything. I asked him to come tonight, but tonight's the first night of Rosh Hashanah, so he wasn't able to make it tonight.
I don't know, I need it.
Well, what's going on, Chief?
Well, I think you've heard the arguments as to what the sewer fees are. I think the only argument I've heard from the applicant as to why they cannot pay the sewer fees is the economic argument. If there are other arguments as to why the board shouldn't impose the sewer fees of the sewer commission, it would be appropriate to put those on the table now. But the only one argument I've heard that I can identify is that the project is uneconomic with $1.4 million of sewer fees.
Well, I mean, also, obviously, the issues with regards to the dates of when those fees were implemented and how they impact this project, I've already brought that up as well.
But I think the response I've heard is that the sewer fees that are proposed by the sewer commissioners are consistent with the dates and consistent with the Hollis Hills decision, and
And like I said, I've reviewed the Hollis Hills decision, but just the decision itself, I don't have the backup information as to what was submitted. The decision itself calls into question whether or not that privilege fee was in place as of May 2nd, 2009, which is after when we filed. It would be an issue that we would have to further develop.
In the courts on that, the Horace Hills. Where's that? In other words, that's not discussable at this point in time, or where they're going.
Because he said you should bring that.
Is that an issue?
Yeah, I mean, the issue of the sewer fees actually is still pending in the appeals court, from what I understand, but.
Say that again, Dan?
The issue of the sewer fees in Hollis Hills is still pending in the appeals court.
Right.
But, look, I think what might be helpful to the board is I can put together a memo kind of addressing these 3 or 4 issues that Paul has raised, the Emerald Place project, the dates, when was the privilege fee thing adopted, when was the sewer connection fee adopted. So you can see it. I'll lay this out for you so you have it before the next meeting. But, I mean, my opinion is that you're on solid ground for applicability of at least a privilege fee, and frankly, that's the big number. I mean, the connection fee only comes out to a couple $100,000. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but
That's still a big number.
It's a big number, you're right. But I will note, too, that there wasn't any objection to the applicability of the privilege of the connection fee in 2010 when they were here before us last time. They agreed to pay it, and they didn't appeal that. So I think it's kind of hard. It'll be hard for them to argue suddenly that that's not applicable when they didn't challenge that issue, 4 years ago.
What was the plan? It was a different, we going back to when they were going to be units then, right? So we
Correct.
We have
For
two
sale
different
versus for rent.
financial elements.
But connection fees are connection fees. The point is they didn't contest the applicability of it last time. I'm not saying that's dispositive. I'm just saying it's.
Differentiation between the two.
It doesn't matter whether it's rental or for sale. So I think why don't I lay that out in a memo? I'll work with Carl on that to make sure I've got my facts correct, and we'll get that to you before the next meeting. Before the next meeting, we'll have time to have reviewed Mike Jacobs' report. Dick will synthesize that with his own analysis and give you an updated report, I'm assuming.
I swore to myself that when I came here tonight, we weren't going to dance much more and that we would close next month.
I think that's a great idea.
I was sure wrong on that one.
No,
Well, I mean,
I think
if we can't resolve this next month, I don't know when we will.
I think you can resolve it next month.
You think we can?
I think we're down to one issue.
I'm just confused in a totally different way than I was when I walked in the door.
It happens to me often.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the bottom line I'm walking away with is that the only issue is whether the sewer fees make the project uneconomic.
Well, yeah, that's what it says when every time I read it.
Subject to
And then-
their
and then-
reservation of rights on the legal arguments.
And in the classical quantity discount doesn't easily apply. I thought it was just sit around, they'd throw it to us and we'd say, what number do you like today? And we kick and go with it, but you present matters of law that we need to look at, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it could be a negotiation, and I think it's worth pointing out that you are getting something pretty substantial in return for this rental project that you didn't get with the for sale project. So there might be some value there, and there could be some horse trading. You've got 100% affordable towards your SHI project. That's going to give you 120 unit, 120?
20. With substantially less physical impacts, I might add, in terms of the site itself.
The bonus for the
Right.
town, but
So-
but it's the sewer commission that has to think about quantity discount in spite of the law.
Then again, Mr. Chairman, we
I don't know how you paint it or create it or, am I right?
You are, but then you just heard a possibility that they might just connect directly to Leominster, in which case we get nothing for fees. So I think,
Well, we get the 100%.
Said nothing?
No.
Right, exactly.
100% SHI.
No,
you get the SHI benefit, right,
on the 40B count,
right.
we get that.
You get that regardless, right?
Town gets that. That's the big, the only thing that's really great for the town is getting that 120. That was the sweetener to the whole deal even by converting from what it was to what it is. And to the applicant, it's the best sweet for him because it's where the market is and he goes where the market goes. So it's good for him, it's good for us. It's bad for him in terms of out-of-pocket costs unless he can cut underneath and go the other way. And if he goes the other way, God bless him. And the issue falls from the table. But on the other hand, the toughest one who has all the law behind him is the sewer department. And if they figure out a way to bend a little bit, quantity discount I refer to, we shall see. I don't know. But you're saying discussion is in order?
I think we need to understand the economics before we can talk about what that number should be. That's my advice.
Okay.
I think we're sort of discussing this in a vacuum. We need to have this analysis because they're saying we can't give you more than 400,000. How do we know? We need to test it. We need to look at those numbers and have Dick look at them and understand whether or not that's accurate or not. That's your job. That's your fiduciary duty to the town.
So is it time to ask for a continuance of this meeting?
Can I?
Unless you want to look at the decision. Go
Well, before we get to that, I did circulate a draft decision a couple weeks ago. I'm assuming you all have it. There has been, in the last couple weeks, some additional emails from fire department and from Fred, and I'm a little concerned that I may not have all of the concerns embodied as conditions. And there's been some recent revisions to the plan. I think there's a September 10th version now, is that right? September 10th was the last iteration?
August 1st, right the second.
I'm sorry?
August 1st, right the second.
August 1st was the last iteration? You circulated, you sent an email with a plan on September 10th, though, right?
With an August 1st date on it.
Okay. All right, I understand. So I'm not sure if we have, do we have a review letter from Fred after that date? I don't.
No.
Fred, did you? Okay, so I think I would personally like to see something in writing from Fred saying, these are my concerns from before, they've been addressed, bullet points. This has been addressed through a change in the plan, this has been addressed by some, just kind of laying it all out, so we have a record of how all these concerns got resolved. It sounds like they are resolved, which is great, but I'd like to see that so we have something in the record that we can, and that way I can make sure that anything that needs to be a condition in the decision is actually in there. Is that reasonable?
Young lady in the back.
First of all, the reason why there is no letter at the moment, because some of the revisions were even today.
I'm sorry?
Some of the revisions were even done this morning.
Okay.
So nothing, but Wes had just mentioned to me, if the board should probably decide at least one thing about the land, what is a landscape island, so that gets incorporated in the plans, because that hasn't been decided. Everything else has been discussed, changed, and so forth, but as of this morning, but that landscape island is still questionable.
That's the only outstanding item.
Where is this landscaped island?
Wes, do you want to point that out? It's like the end of each parking bay.
Oh, I see.
Before it was just striped pavement markings on the pavement, now it's a raised curb and grass island. But is a landscape island grass, or is it have the tree in it, or bushes, or whatever? My understanding in past projects throughout other towns was having landscape trees, plantings.
I think you brought that up at last meeting or something when we were...
I brought up that they didn't have any interior landscape. Now they have it in the form of grass islands, but that's their proposal. To me, that wasn't interior landscape, because you're trying to break up visually flat, open areas.
What does it take to accomplish that? A tree?
Usually it's trees, because when they talk about, in most bylaws, when they talk about interior landscaping, is X number of one tree per 20 spaces, 10 spaces, 15, whatever the number is. So it's landscaping. Landscaping becomes plantings in everybody's mind, not just grass. When you talk about landscaping around the buildings, what do you assume it's going to be? Grass? Or plantings?
Yeah, I mean, is it going to be very tough to maintain a tree in that? I mean, you got the snow removal in the wintertime. You've got, how about if they just put a little segment of fence there or something, or put a light post there or something? But, trying to put an actual planting there, I don't think that's too practical, just my 2 cents.
And that's of course the board's discretion. It's what's in the different subdivision site development regulations and so forth require interior landscaping in parking lots. But that's your discretion.
And that was my 2 cents. Go ahead.
If I may, what we've done is, on our landscape plan, we've gone overboard on plantings in the front of the buildings, as the board had seen in Townsend. We'd prefer to go grass in the islands, just because of the fact of maintenance. If you plant shrubs there, or you put bark mulch there, or whatever it is, salt, plowings, everything is going to be a problem as far as maintaining those. Trees, dropping of leaves, then people slip on the leaves when it's wet, and they say, oh, we had a slip and fall. I would much rather have like we've done, is do an excessive amount in front of the building where it shows, and then go to grassed areas in the parking lot areas. But I'm willing to do what the board, I'm not taking a position, I won't do anything, but I just think what we've done is, it was preferred to spend more money in the front of the buildings and then not have the maintenance problems on the road sides or the parking lot sides.
What's going to happen to those areas in the wintertime? Is that going to be for snow storage?
Probably somewhat, but typically what we do is on these projects, we bring in a loader. So we'd have snow blowers and loaders, so we try to get everything off the property and then pile it up so that we have full access for emergency vehicles and for parking. We even snow blow between the vehicles because it's difficult to have the people leave the cars. So in that case, when they're doing that, we blow it into the main aisleway, and then we take loaders and we remove it from there and then stockpile it.
Yeah, but where is it going to be stockpiled? It's not going to be
in the snow storage areas all around. They've got a plan.
On those
No, not on the islands.
islands
No.
you're talking about?
No. We blow everything to the middle and we take loaders and remove it.
Right.
The only thing that'll be on the islands is what is there from the natural snow. We wouldn't remove what Mother Nature puts on top. We just wouldn't pile on top.
Okay, so what is the maintenance problem? Just the care for the shrubs?
Well, it's just when you go to, when you salt and sand,
Right.
it just spreads everywhere. You know, you take a sander and you get the sander clipping,
Right.
it just casts it, and it's just gonna inevitably go on there, on the island. So even the grass is a maintenance problem, but I can understand the rationale behind it. It's just know that every spring you're replanting the grass there.
I think I agree with Paul. From my viewpoint, the grass is enough as long as it doesn't become a snow storage area.
Right.
Because I can understand, the care for shrubs is,
And then that makes for blind spots, it's hard for people to see, and then there's more of a liability issue there as well by piling snow in those type of areas.
okay. Where are we at?
Was your
recommendation?
Well, I had suggested that we might need to get a follow-up letter from Fred that covers all of his previous comments and says whether or not they've been addressed and how they've been addressed. So if something's been addressed through a plan change, say that so that we know that everything has been adequately resolved.
Going to create a new
And-
updated draft at this point in time?
Well, yeah, I would, if there's anything that needs to be added as a condition, I need that to, tell me what I need to put in as conditions. I put in some conditions that related to some of the concerns, but I'm concerned whether or not I've hit them all, and I don't know that until I have this conversation. So it might actually be useful for maybe to have a technical work session between us and the engineers. We might be able to do it on the phone. But just, I think just going through everything this is a very big project. We haven't really talked that much about, design conditions, and so I just want to make sure we've got everything covered and we don't leave any stone unturned.
I'd like to see the verbiage in there about the playground, the stumping, the clearing, the $30,000. I want to see that wording in there. And I'd also like to see some sort of time frame in which the playground's going to be done, like perhaps after the second building's completed, but before the third building started, then the playground gets installed, something along those lines.
Thank you.
That's on the recreation parcel?
Yeah. And, in conjunction with the Parks Department, in consultation with them as to how to spend the $30,000.
Would you mind just making that a motion, and I'm in agreement with that?
Okay.
Going to 2 buildings, and then we'll put that to rest?
Right.
I think that's a really good idea, the way you did it.
Right.
It was very well put, and if you could just make a motion that way, I'm in agreement with it.
All right, I'd like to move that we do that, incorporate that into the decision.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Done.
I have a question to make sure. I think in my mind, after the discussion we had on those islands, that's the last outstanding issue for you, Fred, on the points of agreement?
That's correct. And the light, cut sheets for the lights. Those two.
Okay.
Can I ask a question just while we're talking about some of these issues?
Take the floor.
Great. One of the new features on this plan, I think, is this access driveway that's going to go around these buildings. I kind of missed how this is going to be built. Did I hear you correctly to say there's going to be crushed stone?
Crushed concrete.
Okay.
So he's proposed 1 foot of crushed concrete,
Yeah.
and then to be loomed on top of it, then seated. That way there, if a truck needs to go around the building, they'd have a base underneath the loam, so they'd be able to get around the building without sinking.
So during the winter, you plow that area?
Yes.
Or snow blow.
Isn't that going
Or
to take...
snow blow, yes, snow blow.
Snow blow, whatever.
Whatever you do to keep it clear.
Yes.
So isn't that going to just ruin the grass that you seed?
Oh, only if there's a fire. And
No, but every winter you're going to be plowing that, right?
Snow blow it.
And it's
Okay.
it's frozen. You snow blow it, it'll have
that'd
zero
be fine.
effect on it. Other than the frost will go deeper in the ground in that area. That's the only thing that'll happen.
Just like a football field.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. The snow acts as an insulator, so the only thing it'll do is just push the frost deeper in the ground.
Right.
Take longer to thaw.
Okay, so I would recommend, there's a lot of little details that I'd like to understand better. Maybe I can set up a meeting separately with these guys, whether it's a phone call or a meeting,
Okay.
if the board's okay with that.
Just make sure also that that westerly area of the site is not going to be built upon. We had discussed that before.
Yep.
We want to make sure that's actually in there, so that down the road, we don't get a request to build in the Piedmont.
Yes. And Dan, you have a copy of the updated waivers?
The one from today?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's nothing significantly changed.
Well, it's just...
It's the elimination of waivers, really.
Remember the previous waivers that mentioned things like a 6-inch line, but there is no, it's 8. It's
Right,
just a couple of house cleaning things.
There's no new substantive waivers.
Either that or put a restriction on it.
Des, did we address your question yet?
Did you wish to speak, miss? Yeah. Okay.
I overheard,
Say your name and address.
my name is Cheryl
Got away from it
Kuzmich.
last time.
My name is Cheryl Kuzmich. I live on 30 F&L Road in Leominster. Some of the previous discussions about the sewer may not be an option to run down that road. I have been previously denied. That's why some of the information I'm taking on tonight, I was hoping that would benefit me, but Leominster denied any sewer running on that road due to it being, in their eyes, private. So that's just one comment I wanted to mention.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody got comments on there? Okay.
So we're going to target closing the hearing at next meeting, right? Oh, you want to hold it open, Gary?
I'm on board with you.
But that, I think we will have a review of the pro forma, review of the final draft of the decision, and then we will close the hearing, assuming everything goes okay. And the board will have 40 days to review
Deliberate.
and file with the town clerk. You just can't take any more information after you've closed the hearing. You can still debate it, but you can't take any more information.
Well, I have, seems like one thing is open. I think we haven't really had the bodies of mind get together for some path to success called sewer. So we have a meeting next time. Where are we at?
Right, if we're going to close, we have to know what the number's going to be.
What breaks the tie? What makes them profitable and the sewer commission happy because they've got the money that they need to control their expenses and indebtedness? But right now, there's loggerheads. The only thing I can see is the courts in front of us. Unless, I'm looking for a compromise. And I don't see any. Unless someone else sees what I don't see.
Right. I mean, we're $1 million apart, so do we cut the million in half?
We're
I don't
saying
know.
we're closing the meeting.
Right, we have to know that.
There are gonna be some unhappy puppies around here. We usually like to close the meeting with everybody kinda happy.
Well, maybe it won't happen this time, Mr.
Not
Chairman.
always, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know the last time that
one
happened.
We could have all parties unhappy. See, I don't know if we've got the building blocks to have a successful conclusion.
You don't have the finances to compare
Yeah,
to. so
but remember
you can't
what
make
you're
a
saying. You're saying let's
Are we going to have
close the next
meeting
meeting.
pro formas, and then we got to be Solomon and
No room for
split the baby?
negotiation or conclusion or understanding or whatever that we need to make this.
Well,
There's nothing that says you have to close the meeting next week. It's just a target that I would suggest you work to.
Well, I don't have a problem with
If you're not
that.
satisfied at the meeting that you have all the information that you need, and you want more information, then don't close the hearing. But if you are satisfied that you do have enough information, you need to have another, you can have another meeting afterwards. You just cannot take in new information.
Yeah. Okay, you left the cap half open there.
Right.
Does everybody have a copy of the pro forma? don't know if
I think I've seen two, one, your analysis
What's the
and their
pro forma?
analysis.
The
Is that
pro
what you're
forma,
asking?
the most recent? Do you want to give them?
Date of the most recent.
Yeah.
Monday.
Well, that's what I thought we were gonna, you said it was economic, they're saying it's not. I thought we were gonna battle it out here, we gotta have a battle royal.
It's a matter of the capital cemetery.
Death
I have a
match.
pro forma
Thank you
here
for
that I
coming.
just got.
Cage match.
Mine starts with V1, applicant's request for waivers that I just received, but I don't see a date on it.
No, that's a waiver request. That's not the,
Huh?
that's
Right,
not the
no,
pro
that's
forma.
not.
That's a waiver request. That's just the updated waiver request that eliminates.
Is this it?
That's not it. Gary just handed them out. There's essentially 4 different documents there. The reason that there are that many is, first of all, there are 2 different pro formas that are being analyzed, one with the full sewer fees and one with the sewer fees as we're suggesting.
Okay,
And then there are 2 versions of each of those because there were changes made to an earlier version, so we're just trying to show the work. So one of them is annotated to show where all the changes were made.
Those were all online a couple weeks ago, right?
I believe, I'm not sure when it
So
was.
the first
when did
one
these go
you'll
out?
see is showing it
18th.
uneconomic
Yeah.
with
Just last
the
week.
sewer fees as suggested.
You set it up Monday or
And if there are boxes, it'll tell you, you know, it's a change, that means it's a change from a previous pro
Wait a
forma.
minute. Wait a minute.
And it explains why.
I'm confused.
That was our intention.
It worked.
This is the pro forma.
This is the pro forma, yeah.
That's the waiver list.
Is this the waiver? Someone said, no, it wasn't.
No, that's the waiver list. That's not a
That's
pro
it?
forma.
No, that's what we had at our package
I got
tonight.
so many,
You
my
are
pile at
confused.
home was this big, I can't find anything in that
Did you see the
pile.
file in my office?
What, you taking it away from me? Don't I get anything back?
It's the same list as in
got a copy of it.
Dan's draft.
Yeah, you got it.
The same list as in
Is
Dan's draft.
this a good one? That's the one you took from me.
Yeah, but you've also got a copy.
Now it's extra special.
I'll be all right. I have the right documents, yes?
I believe you do, yes. Although I
You
can't
better go
actually
see
see
a
them from here.
doctor. Just take that away from me. Okay, where are we at?
So,
We have a
we ready
date
to adjourn to a date certain?
Yep. I think we are, Chairman.
So next time, we're gonna cover the pro forma,
Right.
the waivers, further discussion on
Fees.
the waiver requesting that we grant the waiver of 401.1022, or whatever the number is.
The very precise number.
That's your request, your formal request.
Correct.
Do I have a formal request from the sewer department requesting us to deny?
Well, they formally want.
Yeah, there was a memo filed.
They submitted a memo
1,400,000.
with their position, certainly.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we get to act like Solomon.
Did that,
Maybe.
Chair will
Split that
accept
baby.
the motion for continuation to a date, time, and specific?
So moved.
Second.
What date, please?
October 22nd. You picked the one Wednesday in October, I was good. Excellent.
Well, we knew that. We looked at the calendar.
October 22nd. Not that-
And we weren't worried about it. The only thing
Damn that
that's-
iCloud.
That's not Halloween, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. I mean, I
All
think
in
we've missed
favor?
the building
Aye.
season,
Wait a
so.
minute. Any comments? We all set?
I don't think
Are we
he's
all
trying to
set
get
with
the
the
shovels
53G
in the ground.
account?
They can move more dirt, right?
We covered it before you came.
Okay.
Show up on time, Dan, come
They
on.
said, don't worry about it anymore. It's on the house.
Yeah.
You've taken enough from them.
For some reason, that's the first issue we always address.
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye. So moved.
okay. That was very moving.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Good
time.
evening.
We've got a month or two, yeah.